What are the most profitable franchises in 2022? We're going to look at actual data today, which is something that most other media outlets just ignore completely. We're going to be looking at one lower cost franchise that shows a net profit of $1.5 million a year. But first, we're going to look at some of the absolute misinformation the media is spewing again about franchises. Now, every single list I found, without exception, online was either misinformed or straight up lying. Now, it's crazy how bad this is. It's not even just a small mistake here or there. Now, if you prefer to skip this section, you want to go right to the profitable franchises, feel free, click to this part in the timeline. So first off, we searched for most profitable franchises in 2022. Now, Nerdwallet is the first hit, and they have, lo and behold, McDonald's at number one. Now, these lists always pick McDonald's because, well, it's McDonald's. It must be the most profitable, right? Now, we've covered McDonald's in detail before. We know even in average gross revenue, they're not the highest earners at $2.9 million average a year. And after expenses, remember, that leaves you about an 8 to 15% margin. It varies quite a bit throughout the system. But what about the highest earning McDonald's? Maybe that's what they meant. Is that the most profitable? Well, the most profitable McDonald's in 2020 did just over $9.2 million. So even considering highest gross revenue, McDonald's is not the most profitable. Now, I can name two franchises just off the top of my head in printing and senior care. We've covered them on the channel before, who had individual franchises doing almost $30 million a year. And that's with a $200,000 investment, a lot less than McDonald's. Now, Sonic is also listed as one of the most profitable franchises. But if we look at the list, they're even further down in revenue, grossing only $1.6 million a year. And that's with around a $2 million investment. Now, Dunkin', they've also got listed as one of the most profitable franchises. Dunkin' closed almost 500 locations in 2020, and they're going to be closing more. Their financials indicate gross revenue of $1.2 million for drive-through and $886,000 a year for non-drive-through. Now, at 10% margin, your profits in Dunkin' are going to be about $90,000 to $120,000 a year. Now, does that sound like the most profitable franchise to you? Now, Anytime Fitness is listed as well. Let's take a look direct from their own financials. Here's their monthly total revenue for Anytime Fitness, okay? Now, this revenue includes all memberships, all pay per visit, and all personal training. Average revenue for locations in 2020. Now, we added it all up. Let's roughly call it $25,000 a month. That's $300,000 gross revenue a year. Now, you still have to back out your rent, your equipment leasing, your ad spend. How much of that is left? Now, does that sound like the most profitable franchise? Now, there's more fitness locations than some schools. I could go on for hours about these. These are nowhere near the most profitable. In fact, even in the child education sector, these schools listed are far down the profitable list. Now, here's Startup Guy's most profitable list. Same McDonald's. It has supercuts. It even shows here that they were aware of the revenue, at least. Annual revenue of $262,000. That is gross revenue. How can they include these with a straight face? Dunkin' again, and at the bottom it says they've used information from the Franchise 500, which we've debunked before. You'd be amazed how they actually pick these franchises. I'll put a link at the end of this video if you're interested. But apparently, the most profitable franchise to own overall is Taco Bell. Let's take a look. Well, their gross revenues are only $1.6 million, and about 20 franchises, even just here on this list of QSR food, beat them. Chick-fil-A does over $5 million a year. They are at the top of the list. Now, every single one of these ridiculous lists are so bad, I implore you, please do not use these lists to make a decision. It's kind of like relying on me to do hair and makeup tutorials. So let's take a look at some real data of very profitable brands and some of the stuff that we like. So first off, fitness. Everybody, myself included, got a little bit plump in lockdown. Now, the expectation is that people are going to start hitting the gyms again. The problem is that most of the well-known franchise names that we're all familiar with, these are the ones that fight for the lowest monthly fees. They're also quite low in revenue if you look at the numbers. Now, there are some niche markets, if you're in the US in fitness, that can be more profitable. Yoga, for example, you've got no equipment costs, operational costs are minimal, and some studios show average revenues more than double a traditional fitness studio with lower overhead. Now you can see right here up to $1.2 million annual revenue. Now there's quite a few niche fitness concepts, including martial arts, that can be more profitable than traditional gyms. Next up is automotive. Now when the economy cools off, which it's going to, people tend to drive cars for longer and they need repairs, of course. Now, you all know the big names in franchising in automotive, and they can be profitable. They've got quite a few very profitable people in their system, but there are niche auto franchises with investments from $300,000 that show top quartile averages over $400,000 a year net profit. Now, some oil change franchises have top performers at almost $700,000 net profit annually. Investment for those is also around $300,000. There are also now, what's very interesting, single bay oil change franchises. Really neat concept. Much lower investment, just around $100,000. I think we're going to see a lot more of these going forward in the future. Little secret about this sector, most of the franchise owners did not have experience in automotive or come from an automotive background. Next up, we're going to look at B2B Consulting. Startup quite a bit lower, $65,000 investment all in. Top quartile operators, that's the top 25%, they do almost $700,000 a year. The top 10% in the systems, around $1.2 million a year. The average across the board is $230,000 a year. So this is a very low overhead business. You're typically working from home, minimal expenses. So essentially an executive work from home gig, you can earn six figures in your pajamas. Now for these types of businesses, you need executive business to business experience, sales experience helps, as it's all about building relationships. No one's coming in to buy a hamburger. You got to go out there and get business. If you're an introvert, this business, not a good fit. Next up, we're going to look at renovation. Now, from an investment to profit ratio, there is one brand in the home renovation sector that beats even some of the $1 million investment food franchises for a lot lower investment. About $80,000 all in, and their average net profit for franchisees is $217,000. So a lot of them in that system that are making more than that. Now this brand has grown like crazy. There's actually very few territories remaining. If you want to give us a call, we'll check for you to see if that territory is open. Now there's another brand in renovation sector. It shows EBITDA of over $1.5 million. So essentially net profit for their top 10%. So profit of $1.5 million, investments only around $200,000. Now, renovation franchises, they also don't have the expensive overhead like retail locations like your food. So it can be less expensive to operate. And again, just like the automotive, you don't need construction experience. Staffing, we've covered this before in the channel. We've seen staffing franchises upwards of $25 million for a single unit. So more than double the top grossing McDonald's. Staffing is a good franchise for business builders. Again, it's not something for introverts. We did see a dip in revenue during COVID. The average gross revenues dropping in one of these franchise systems from $6.4 million a year to $5.4 million a year. That's the average revenue across their mature office system. Now, if you've got the business skills and the appropriate demographics and market demand, staffing can be a very profitable business. Next up, senior care. Very hot industry right now. 10,000 boomers turning 65 every single day in the US, and they need some type of care. Now, as noted, we've seen a franchise in this sector generate $28 million a year. Conversely, we also see people fail as well. So make sure that you align your skills and your market demand with the right type of franchise. Now, some systems show average revenues of 1.8 million with gross profit margins of 43%. So it can be a very profitable industry. Again, there's so many things to consider. Market saturation, market demand, alignment of demographic. If you need help with that, give us a call at Franchise City. We're going to wrap up with master franchising. We've covered this on the channel before as well. Master franchisees, what they do is they buy licenses, the rights to a territory, and then they sell those licenses, these franchises, within their territory. So in this scenario, you've got revenue streams from getting half of the franchise fee and also ongoing royalties from all of your sub-franchisees. And those franchisees are typically around $40,000. So if you get half of that, you've got $20,000, you've got 10 locations, you've already made $200,000 of your money back, plus your own location. So it can be a very lucrative business. Many of the big name brands, all of the franchises, they grew quickly because of master franchising. And people who can get into a system early on, get those exclusive rights to a city, they can make millions of dollars over the span of a contract. This, again, is a very relational business. It's going to be a lot of work at the start as well as you build up your own franchise and your franchisees. But once you are set up, it can become a relatively passive income stream. Now, most importantly, if you stopped listening, please start listening again. Even the most profitable franchises that we mentioned also have franchisees who failed. Your location, your market demand, your operational abilities, all these things factor into which franchises are going to be the most profitable for you. It's going to be different for me. It's going to be different for someone in a different environment. It's always different and very unique to you. Don't rely on media hype. Don't go direct to the franchises. Call the experts at Franchise City Broker Group because we have free tools to help you make an informed decision. I'll put details for that above. Are there low-cost franchises that can earn $200,000? You bet there are. That link is down below. And a link to our franchise playlist with dozens of videos. I'll put that right here. Thanks very much for watching. Please like and subscribe.
You are listening to Franchise City, a better way to buy franchise.